In the epic mess that was medieval Europe, emperors usually fell into two camps, the boringly competent or the competently boring. But then there is Frederick II, the most interesting man who lived in the 1000 years we call the Middle Ages. Frederick was born in 1194 to Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI and Queen Constance of Sicily. And you know what's more impressive than naming your kid after a famous monarch? Naming him after two. They called him Frederick Roger, which sounds like a confused time traveler who crash landed in the wrong century, but it was the perfect way to flex his royal pedigree. The Hohenstaufen from dad's side and the Hot Wheel from mom's. Frederick paid tribute to Emperor Frederick Barbarossa himself, his legendary granddad up north, while Roger honored Roger II of Sicily, his equally impressive maternal granddad down south. By being the only son of his parents didn't mean Frederick had the crown gift-wrapped. Both his parents died young and just a year apart, leaving toddler Frederick, barely 4 years old, as the heir to all of this. Of course, handing the keys of such vast realm to a preschooler screams, no, we are not gonna strip little Freddy of all his inheritance. Oh god, they're already fighting. See, Frederick wasn't inheriting just one realm, but two completely different political beasts. On one side, there was the Kingdom of Sicily, legally his and technically protected by the Pope. We'll get to that mess in a bit. And then the Holy Roman Empire. But the German nobles up north really didn't fancy a 4-year-old emperor. So naturally they did what medieval nobles do best. Pick sides and start drama. Half of them backed Frederick's uncle, Philip of Swabia, while the rest supported Otto of Brunswick, nephew to the King of England. The civil war raged for a decade and Otto came out on top, because a noble decided to assassinate Philip in a personal feud. But while Germany was up to some PG-18 stuff, Frederick was growing up in the cultural melting pot that was the Kingdom of Sicily, and he quite enjoyed it. Originally a Norman kingdom carved by war and conquest in the past 2 centuries, Sicily had become a multi-ethnic, multi-faith wonderland, where the Norman Catholic rulers shared a space with Muslims, Jews, and Greek Orthodox Christians. Young Frederick grew up in a court buzzing with scholars, scientists, and scribes chattering away in Arabic, Latin, Greek, Hebrew, you name it. All languages he'd eventually speak himself. Well, maybe not Hebrew, but give the guy a break, he was already outpacing half of Europe by age 10. He also ended up under the guardianship of Pope Innocent III because of some janky medieval politics his mom did, which on paper looked like a win-win for the Pope. With pro-papal Otto sitting on the imperial throne, Frederick could grow up as a loyal little papal vassal. But then Otto did what every papal favorite eventually does. He betrayed the Pope and marched into Sicily to boot Frederick off his throne. Innocent panicked and hit Otto with the holy hammer of excommunication. Then, only a few years later, Otto gets absolutely steamrolled by the French at the Battle of Bouvines. His supporters take one look at that disaster and go, well, that's enough, Otto. And Frederick is now the emperor. Finally, in 1220, Frederick was crowned as the Holy Roman Emperor by Pope Honorius III in Rome. But he actually didn't care that much. He quickly made a beeline straight back to Sicily, where things actually mattered. The kingdom had been left in shambles after years of chaos and noble mismanagement during his childhood, and Frederick wasn't about to let his southern stronghold stay a medieval mess. He got to work restoring Sicily to its former glory, centralizing authority, overhauling laws, refilling the treasury, and basically turning it into the most functional corner of Europe south of the Alps. But good governance wasn't Frederick's only passion. No, he was deeply, and I mean deeply, in love with birds. Like, spends more time with hogs than his family level of obsessed. Falconry wasn't just a hobby, it was a second religion. He even wrote an entire book about it. De arte venandi cum avibus, or The Art of Hunting with Birds, which in true Frederick fashion wasn't just a manual but a serious scientific study that would put most modern birdwatchers to shame, like measuring wingspan and tracking migration patterns. He'd commissioned Arabic translation of falconry treatises, consulted Muslim experts, and even kept a personal zoo full of exotic animals to observe and study. But Frederick's nerdiness didn't stop at animals. Oh no, he was just as obsessed with the human world. He founded the University of Naples to train bureaucrats, and he made sure that everything from science to poetry had a seat at his royal table. Frederick also banned trial by ordeal because it was, and I quote, superstitious nonsense. And for his wildest experiment, he tried raising kids without a speech to discover the natural language of God. Speaking of God and all that, the fun ends when the church wants you to go crusading because you promised them. See, Frederick had promised the church he would go on a crusade, like made a big holy vow and everything. But when Pope Innocent III kicked off the Fifth Crusade, Frederick didn't participate. However, the crusading business became personal when Frederick married Isabella II of Jerusalem in 1225. Frederick, now technically the king of Jerusalem, which its territories were not at the extent of a kingdom nor did they include Jerusalem, decided to take the cross for the Sixth Crusade in 1227. In the September of the same year, Frederick departs only to be struck by the plague, like actual medieval plague. Frederick had to turn back and recover. But the new Pope, Gregory IX, had zero chills and decided to excommunicate Frederick. Frederick went on the crusade anyway, which earned him another excommunication, and he did the crusade in a way no one had ever tried, by not fighting. Yep, Frederick sat down with the Ayyubid Sultan, who at the time was knee-deep in some good old-fashioned family feud, and negotiated the peaceful handover of Jerusalem to Christians. No bloodshed, no sieges, just solid bargaining and one very confused Pope. But confusion quickly turned into outrage, and Pope Gregory IX doubled down by launching an actual crusade against Frederick. And as if having the Pope throw hands wasn't enough, the ever-helpful Germans decided to spice things up by convincing Frederick's son, Henry, who was ruling Germany at the time, to rebel against his own dad. Naturally, Frederick squashed the rebellion and imprisoned his own son. But while Germany folded fast, the Italian gang led by the Pope was a much messier affair. It took about a decade of stabbing, but Frederick finally gained the upper hand and marched his army right up to the gates of Rome. Like, who's excommunicated now, huh? You. Excommunicate. No, I actually don't excommunicate you here. But, I'm about 95 years old. I might die at any moment. Luckily for him, Pope Gregory dropped dead around this time, giving Frederick a brief chance to catch his breath before resuming the fighting with the Lombard League. That lovely coalition of northern Italian cities which popped up whenever an emperor wanted to mess with their independence and all that. At first, Frederick racked up a few wins, but things come crashing down at Parma in 1248, where he got absolutely wrecked and lost about all of his royal treasures. He was forced to leave the ever-defiant Italian to do their thing, but just when you thought the papal drama might cool up, the new Pope, Innocent IV, went as far as calling Frederick the Antichrist. I don't care how much the Pope was annoyed to go full Book of Revelations on Frederick, but man, this screws medieval achievements. Eventually, as his health declined, so did his hold over the chaos he'd once danced through like a pro. And in December 1250, the man known as Stupor Mundi, the wonder of the world, would walk it no more. Frederick died with a legacy both revered and reviled, respected by scholars and slandered by popes, but never ever ignored. And as I said at the start, in 1,000 years of medieval madness, Frederick II still stands as the most interesting man in the Middle Ages. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again next time.